Hello, TUI. Let's be honest for a second. Isn't sustainability kind of over? A few years ago, it was everywhere. Climate strikes, big promises, ambitious goals. And now, sometimes it feels like sustainability was just a trend on the streets. And maybe for you too. Cheers, Marcus.
Is sustainability just a passing trend? Do customers at TUI still care? And what does TUI CEO Sebastian Ebel actually think about the topic? That's what this episode is about. Just a quick note, the interviews were recorded in German and translated into English with the help of AI.
We're on it, right? A TUI podcast on sustainability and the future of travel.
I'm Rebecca and I work at TUI. And I believe that asking critical questions is always a good thing, whether you're a customer or an employee, especially when it comes to my favorite topic, sustainability. That's why I picked up the phone and called Beatrice Braun. She runs a TUI travel agency in Karlsruhe, a town in southern Germany, and she knows much better than I do what customers really care about. Beatrice, hi, great to have you here.
Hi, Rebecca. Happy to be here.
So when someone walks into your travel agency, they probably want one thing, a holiday. What are the first things customers usually ask for?
Well, the first big topic is always budget. And then, of course, what kind of holiday they're actually looking for, what they want to do. Beyond that, wishes are pretty broad. It's just like the range of holidays we offer at TUI, from cruises to hiking trips. There's really everything. And then there's sustainability, which I'm guessing is where you're heading.
Yeah, exactly. Do people ever walk in and say, I want to go to the beach, but the hotel absolutely has to be as sustainable as possible? So they say, I want to go to Greece, this is my budget, and I don't want to walk more than 5 minutes to the beach. But they expect the hotel to save water, recycle, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. And then they come back to us after the holiday. I have a really good example. We had a customer who booked Crete, and Crete is famous for its honey. We always call customers after a trip, and in this case, the customer was genuinely upset, and rightly so, because there was no Greek honey, no Cretan honey in Crete. And that's when you really see how sensitive people are. If something is missing that they associate with sustainability, whether it's reusable water bottles or local food, they react strongly. It's simply expected.
Yeah, that makes sense. So sustainability has to be part of the whole thinking.
And it doesn't just start at the destination. It already starts in our travel agencies. We've changed a lot there. We're paperless now. And yeah, customers don't come in because they are looking for something eco. They come in because they want a holiday. But they really appreciate that we already start thinking sustainability at the very base level. Paperless travel agencies, all the travel documents are in the app. Or no more water in plastic bottles. It's a whole system that fits together.
So customer loyalty today is about more than just a nice hotel and a good beach. It's about the feeling behind it, if I understand you correctly. So it's about what's on the plate and where it comes from. I would say printed travel documents in a travel agency probably isn't the biggest CO2 driver of a holiday, but if it becomes too much, the customers apparently still complain. Beatrice, you've been in the industry for over 20 years. Has something changed?
Oh, absolutely. Many things are much more strategic today. It's a completely different world compared to the past, and customers notice it much more than they used to. Years ago, no one would have said the honey has to be local, and no one would have taken the train to Spain to reduce their footprint. Yeah, that happened, and I was honestly surprised myself.
So when does sustainability usually come up in a conversation with customers?
Often right at the end, when the hotels are already on the table. And if two hotels are comparable, the more environmentally conscious one is a clear bonus. It helps customers feel good about their decision.
Was there a moment that really stuck with you where someone came back from their travels and sustainability played a role in building a great holiday?
Yeah, especially when it comes to excursions. We offer excursions on site, and customers can book them via the TUI portal or directly with us. And some of these excursions support the TUI Care Foundation. Others are Meet the Locals experiences, where guests really connect with people and projects on site. That works incredibly well. It feels real, and it directly supports the people who live there.
So what I'm taking away from this conversation is sustainability might not be the number one deciding factor, but it's woven into almost every decision. That helps a lot. I'll take the question a step further now, but for now, Beatrice, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, and best wishes to Berlin. Bye.
That was the perspective of customers. Sure, even without sustainability initiatives, many people travel with TUI. But when they come back, there might be complaints. And in a market as fiercely competitive as tourism, it's exactly these additional steps that matter. Whether it's local food or a solar panel on the hotel roof, sustainability is a quality feature. But what does sustainability look like at management level? With the people at TUI who make the big decisions. The people who don't need to be convinced with nice pictures, but with numbers, with business successes, and with one very simple question. Sustainability. Does it pay off? That's exactly what I asked myself. So I went straight to someone who's responsible for these decisions. Sebastian Ebel, CEO of TUI Group. Hey, Sebastian, thanks for taking the time.
Hi, Rebecca. Sure.
I just spoke with a colleague from a travel agency, and she says that sustainability is important to our customers, but they don't explicitly ask for it. They simply expect us to take care of it. As a CEO, you have a very different perspective on things. You talk to people from the media, from the finance sector, from partner companies. How does it feel to you now? Was sustainability just a trend that's already fading, or is it here to stay?
So for me, it was always a matter close to my heart, long before it became a trend. I think it's something extremely important for the TUI brand. Maybe it's still true today that customers don't want to pay extra for it, but they do expect it. And what has changed massively in recent years is that many measures now make economic sense. In the past, it was often altruistic. You did it to feel good. And today, it's no longer a contradiction to economic viability.
Do you have an example? Like the classic argument is always sustainability doesn't work, it's too expensive.
If I look at our investments in photovoltaics today, they have excellent profitability. The example in Turkey where we build large PV fields, the payback period is 6 to 7 years. That's very good. And that applies to most topics. When we buy new equipment today, small or large, for our kitchens, it's similar. The additional costs, if there are any at all, are justified, especially for a stove that uses much less energy compared to one that consumes a lot.
So it pays off quickly to do something.
Exactly. And you have to approach it intelligently, have an overview of where there's good profitability. It should flow into the DNA of everyone who makes decisions.
And is that already the case at TUI?
Well, I have the impression that it largely is. I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I noticed that many colleagues respond positively. Of course, when we said we wanted to switch to electric mobility.
You mean all cars going electric, right?
Yeah, exactly. There were some who didn't like it so much. Then we talked about it, and then there were arguments and also a lot of fake news that are no longer true today. And of course, if someone has 5 children and needs 7 seats, that's a different situation. But for the most part, it's about persuasion, and we can win colleagues over.
For many people, sustainability is like just CO2 reduction. We've done many podcast episodes on all kinds of topics, plastic reduction, food waste, and so on. So I would say it's safe to say that a lot is happening at TUI beyond CO2 reduction. Nevertheless, CO2 targets are super important. So Sebastian, where do we currently stand at TUI regarding our CO2 reduction?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's much more than CO2. A very big topic close to my heart is water, because it's an absolute scarce resource, especially in many of the regions where we operate. Food is also a crucial topic. CO2, of course, is very important because of its direct impact on the climate, even if many countries are moving away from it today. I've always said that in 10 years, I don't just want to be at minus 50% CO2 like with hotels, but at 100%. Because I believe it's technically possible. Look at cruising, for example. LNG from biogas is already technically and economically feasible today. And I also believe that major targets can become even more ambitious. And we're really doing it very, very well.
You say very, very well, but you also must have numbers.
Before we go there, there's one exception I want to mention, and that's flying. I think that's the most difficult topic. The rest are diligence tasks. If we say today we want 50% less CO2 in hotels and we're currently at 25%, I'd say even 100% is possible. But flying is different. I don't yet see us getting as far as we would like. Of course, with a new fleet, you can save around 15%. Better routing helps as well. If the EU had a single European sky for routing, we could go further. And that's why I think this is a task where politics, business, and we as an airline have to work together to reach the goal, not in 2050, but much earlier.
So that's where it still doesn't quite come together. And what I'm hearing is that it's also about politics and the framework conditions, like keyword sustainable aviation fuel, SAF.
Exactly. These are investments that we as a company simply can't make alone. We're already glad when we can afford a new aircraft. A joint effort in Europe is necessary.
You said earlier that things are going really, really well in some areas, and I will continue to push for numbers. How about hotels? How much of our CO2 emissions have we already reduced?
Yeah, of course. In the hotel sector, we're currently at just under 20% of CO2 reduction. And our target for 2030 is 50% of CO2 reduction. Last year, we exceeded our interim target, and I hope we'll do it again this year. In the airline sector, we're just under 10% of CO2 reduction.
And that's always compared to 2019. TUI is part of the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which means our targets are aligned with climate science.
Yes, everything is measured relatively to today's capacity compared to 2019. If we operate more ships or planes, that reduces the absolute reduction, but relatively, the figure is much higher.
So if things are going well in some areas and are more difficult in others, was there ever something that really hurt?
Yes, the delayed delivery of the 737 MAX aircraft.
The airplanes.
Yeah, that hit us hard. And what personally frustrates me is that Europe still has managed to create a single airspace.
Just to explain it briefly for listeners who usually sit further back in the airplane and not in the cockpit, you can't always fly the shortest route. Even in the air, there are something similar to roads. And sometimes that means detours or more complex routes, which simply use more kerosene.
We saw this very clearly during the COVID crisis when the skies were almost empty. Back then you could fly much more freely, often on the shortest route. And that saves kerosene. Today we're back to a fragmented system. Different countries decide who can use which airspace. And that leads to significant additional fuel consumption. That's why CO2 pricing alone is more like treating the symptoms. It would be far more effective to address the structural issues, for example, by moving towards a truly single European sky.
Yeah, that sounds definitely frustrating. On a more positive note, was there ever a moment where you thought, this is exactly how I imagined it would work?
I remember because I was involved very early on at one of the last physical annual general meetings. So 5 years ago, the German NGO NABU came and said, fracked LNG doesn't work because it's environmentally harmful. It has to be bio-LNG.
For the non-cruisers here, LNG, bio or not, goes into a cruise ship's tank.
Exactly. And I said, this will be possible in 5 years. And no one believed it. And today we see that it is possible at equal or acceptably similar costs if the CO2 tax is taken into account. Biogas is produced from manure, water, straw, organic waste. That biogas is then converted into bio-LNG. Chemically, it's exactly the same. A ship can be operated climate neutrally with it. And the methane that would otherwise escape from the manure into the atmosphere is burned instead. I find it amazing that what was a vision 5 years ago is now a reality.
Okay, 5 years ago, no one believed it, and now it's happening.
And it also makes commercial sense again.
Tourism is generally a CO2-intensive industry. Planes, cruise ships, they are very CO2 heavy. And TUI is one of the biggest tourism companies in the world. That also means when TUI does something, it has real impact. Would you say there are other areas where the size of TUI is an advantage?
Yeah, I think the advantage is scale. We can think things through for a much larger base. Take buses, for example. If we decide whether a bus should be electric, the economics look very different depending on how many buses you operate. If you know you're operating around 1,000 buses, that's a different situation. The first electric bus will join the TUI fleet soon. And if it works, it's just a matter of time before the second and the third follow. And it will work. You'd learn along the way. And the initial costs can be spread across many buses. The same applies to ships and to hotels. We have some very exciting new technologies, and I think that has an impact on the industry. I've always said that what we do with cruise ships is a good example for cargo ships, of which there are many more.
And therefore, in total, much higher CO2 emissions.
Exactly.
You mentioned scaling up because we operate in so many destinations. Can this also work across different parts of the businesses? Like, can something that works in hotels also be transferred to planes or cruise ships?
Yeah, a good example comes from our UK colleagues. A few years ago, they had the idea to filter microplastics from wastewater, especially from large washing machines. The water passes through a membrane and the microplastics stay behind and are then fed into plastic recycling. I liked the idea. At the time, I didn't fully realize how big the problem actually was or how the recycling progress would work, but they tested it and it worked very well. TUI Cruises picked it up and transferred it to ships, and now it's being rolled out in hotels as well.
I can tell you're very involved in all of these topics, from microplastic filters to solar panels. We are having this conversation because of a critical customer message saying sustainability isn't really important anymore. From what I've heard, though, sustainability still matters to our customers, to the business, and if I understand you correctly, to you personally as well.
First of all, it's extremely important for the one world we have, and we shouldn't let ourselves be too unsettled by trends west of Europe. For future generations, this is essential. Everything we do today brings us closer to preserving or restoring livable foundations. And the more we lead by example and not with a raised finger, but in economically sound way, the more others will follow.
If you could give our customers one message on this topic, what would it be?
That it's a shared task. It's not company versus customer or customer versus company. It's something we need to tackle together. And we shouldn't let ourselves be guided by short-lived trends, but work together to make this world a little better.
That sounds great. Then I would say let's keep going.
Exactly.
Thank you, Sebastian.
You're welcome.
I'm back in the studio now, straight from Hanover, where I spoke with TUI CEO Sebastian Ebel. And by the way, this is the final episode of this season of We're On It, right? Over the past episodes, we've asked a lot of critical and sometimes uncomfortable questions. And today, it all comes down to the one question that connects everything. Is sustainability still important? For customers, for management, and for the whole company as a whole? Let's take a listen to the comment one more time.
Hello, TUI. Let's be honest for a second. Isn't sustainability kind of over? A few years ago, it was everywhere. Climate strikes, big promises, ambitious goals. And now, sometimes it feels like sustainability was just a trend on the streets. And maybe for you too. Cheers, Marcus.
Hey, Marcus. Honestly, that question is coming up more and more right now. Yes, the voices from the streets have become quieter. And yes, some companies and even entire countries are rolling back their climate targets. We are not. For us, sustainability isn't a campaign. It's everyday business. Reducing emissions, strengthening local jobs, avoiding single-use plastics. Not everything works perfectly right away. And not everything moves as fast as we'd like. But one thing is clear, we're on it. And we're staying on it. We're on it, right? A TUI podcast on sustainability and the future of travel. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to write to rebecca@tui.com. If you want to learn more about sustainability at TUI, click on tuigroup.com/sustainability. The guest answers in this episode were translated from German to English using artificial intelligence and have been editorially reviewed. This podcast is produced by Bosepark Productions. Host and editorial Rebecca Garrick, with support from Magnus Hüttenbehrend and Christian Rapp. A special thanks goes to the communications and the sustainability team of the TUI Group. Thank you for listening and see you in the next episode.